When we talk about the concept of self-love, it often sounds abstract or even cliché, but its impact on our self-worth is undeniable and life-changing. To love yourself is to acknowledge, embrace, and honor your own existence. It is to see yourself not through the lens of comparison, external judgment, or fleeting validation, but through the truth that you are inherently valuable. Many people go through life waiting for others to define their worth through attention, praise, or acceptance. But the reality is that true self-worth is something you must build from within. Without it, relationships can become unbalanced, where one person constantly gives while the other takes, or where one accepts mistreatment because they do not feel they deserve better. Self-love is the shield and the foundation that protects us from falling into those traps. When you truly begin to love yourself, you establish an unshakable belief that you are enough as you are. You no longer measure your value by external markers like how many people like your photos, how much approval you get from colleagues, or how perfectly you meet society's ever-changing expectations. Instead, you begin to see your uniqueness as your power. Self-love helps you stand in front of the mirror and say, "I am worthy, I am deserving, I am enough," even if the world tells you otherwise, and that inner conviction radiates into everything you do. Your relationships, your career, your dreams, and even the way you carry yourself. Think of it like the foundation of a house. Without a strong foundation, no matter how beautifully decorated the house might be, it will collapse under pressure. The same is true for us. If we do not love ourselves, we can decorate our lives with achievements, relationships, and material possessions. But the slightest storm, criticism, rejection, failure, will shake us to the core. Self-love is that deep foundation of self-worth that keeps us standing tall no matter what life throws at us. It gives us resilience, dignity, and courage. This doesn't mean that practicing self-love makes us perfect. In fact, it is the opposite. It allows us to embrace our imperfections. Too often, people confuse self-love with perfectionism. They think, "I'll love myself when I lose the weight, when I get the job, when I'm finally in a relationship." But real self-love is unconditional. It is loving yourself today, with your flaws, scars, and mistakes. It is knowing that your imperfections are not limitations, but layers of humanity that make you unique. It is the quiet confidence to say, "I may not be perfect, but I am still worthy of love and respect." The moment you embrace that truth, your self-worth strengthens. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into boxes that others place around you. You stop apologizing for being who you are. You stop seeking approval in places that only leave you empty. And perhaps most importantly, you stop settling for less than what you deserve. That is one of the greatest gifts of self-love. It redefines your standards. People who do not love themselves often accept crumbs of affection, hoping that some love, even toxic love, is better than none. But when you cultivate self-love, you raise your standards. You begin to expect kindness, respect, honesty, and care, not because you are demanding, but because you finally recognize your value. Another vital aspect of self-love and self-worth is the ability to set boundaries. Boundaries are an act of self-respect, and without self-love, boundaries often feel impossible. We let people overstep, drain our energy, and walk over us because we are afraid of being disliked. But when you love yourself, you realize that saying no does not make you unkind. It makes you strong. You learn to protect your energy, your time, and your mental health. You learn to walk away from people and situations that bring you harm, not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself enough to choose peace. Building self-worth through self-love also impacts the way you pursue your goals and dreams. When you do not love yourself, you often hesitate to take risks, fearing that failure would prove your inadequacy. But when you truly value yourself, you understand that failure does not diminish your worth. It teaches you. You become more resilient, more daring, and more compassionate toward yourself when things don't go as planned. You give yourself permission to grow at your own pace, to celebrate progress rather than perfection, and to trust the process of becoming the best version of yourself. Furthermore, self-love teaches you how to receive love. It might sound strange, but many people struggle to receive love because they do not feel worthy of it. Compliments make them uncomfortable, acts of kindness make them suspicious, and genuine care feels undeserved. But when you have built a strong sense of self-worth, you can accept love without doubting it, because you know deep inside that you deserve it. You don't question why someone loves you. You understand that their love is simply reflecting the value you already see in yourself. There is also a deeper spiritual element to self-love. When you honor yourself, you are also honoring the life, the energy, the breath that was given to you. You are acknowledging that you are not an accident, but a purposeful creation. To love yourself is to respect the very gift of life. And in doing so, you step into your relationships not as someone seeking completion, but as someone already whole. That sense of wholeness transforms the way you connect with others. You don't cling out of fear of loneliness. You don't lose yourself in trying to be what someone else wants you to be. Instead, you enter relationships as a partner, an equal, someone who has love to give because they are already filled with love from within. But let's be honest, self-love is not easy. It requires unlearning years of self-doubt, negative talk, and the pressure of unrealistic standards. It requires patience and practice. It may mean facing painful truths, healing from past wounds, and forgiving yourself for mistakes you've carried too long. It means replacing the harsh voice inside your head with a kinder one that says, "I am doing my best, and that is enough." It may involve creating habits that nurture you, spending time alone, journaling, meditating, exercising, eating well, surrounding yourself with people who uplift you, and letting go of those who don't. Self-love is not a destination but a daily practice, a commitment to yourself. As you nurture this relationship with yourself, you will notice a profound shift. You will start to walk differently, talk differently, and show up differently in the world. People will sense your confidence, not because you boast about it, but because it is quietly present in the way you carry yourself. You will stop chasing love and start attracting it naturally, because love gravitates toward those who radiate it from within. Ultimately, building self-worth through self-love is about reclaiming your power. It is about refusing to hand over the keys of your value to anyone else. It is about knowing that you are enough, with or without a partner, with or without achievements, with or without constant approval. And when you know this, you are free to love fully, free to live authentically, and free to create relationships that are rooted not in fear or lack, but in abundance and respect. So if you want to create the best relationships, start by looking inward. Start by asking yourself how you treat yourself, how you speak to yourself, and how you see yourself. Do you treat yourself with kindness, patience, and care, or do you criticize, neglect, and dismiss yourself? Remember, the world often mirrors back to us what we believe about ourselves. If you want respect, show yourself respect. If you want kindness, treat yourself with kindness. If you want love, give yourself the love you so freely give to others. Because at the end of the day, the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. Everything else flows from there. And when you love yourself deeply, fully, unapologetically, you will never question your worth again. You will know it, you will live it, you will embody it. And that, my friends, is the kind of foundation on which the best, most beautiful relationships are built. When we talk about toxic attachments, we are talking about the kinds of relationships and connections that drain us rather than nourish us, that confine us rather than free us, that break us down rather than build us up, The sad reality is that many people remain entangled in toxic dynamics not because they enjoy them, but because they believe they don't deserve better. They cling to harmful relationships out of fear, insecurity, and loneliness, convincing themselves that some form of companionship, even painful companionship, is better than none, and this is where self-love becomes the ultimate safeguard. When you cultivate love for yourself, you learn that no relationship, romantic, familial, or otherwise, is worth sacrificing your peace, your dignity, or your soul. Toxic attachments often form in the absence of self-love. Think about it. If you do not truly value yourself, you are more likely to allow others to undervalue you. If you do not believe in your own worth, you may tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or neglect because you have convinced yourself that this is the best you can get. You may overlook red flags because the thought of being alone terrifies you more than the pain of staying. You may confuse control for care, obsession for love, or dependency for loyalty. This is how so many people get trapped in relationships that slowly destroy them, relationships where their identity, their confidence, and their joy erode day by day, but self-love disrupts this cycle. When you genuinely love yourself, you know that you deserve a love that is healthy, respectful, and uplifting. You no longer interpret toxicity as passion or control as commitment. Instead, you recognize those behaviors for what they are: harmful, dangerous, and undeserving of your presence. Self-love allows you to look at a relationship honestly and ask, does this bring me peace or does it bring me pain? Does this relationship nurture my growth or hinder it? Does this person see me, respect me, and value me? Or do they only take without giving? When you love yourself, you are willing to answer those questions honestly, and you are willing to act on the answers, even if that means walking away. One of the hardest truths about toxic attachments is that they thrive on self-doubt. People stay because they believe they are not good enough to find something better. They stay because they think they have to earn love by sacrificing themselves. They stay because they've been told, directly or indirectly, that they are unworthy of respect. Self-love dismantles those lies. It teaches you that you never have to beg for love, that you never have to prove your worth through suffering, and that you never have to remain where you are not respected. It teaches you that your value is not tied to how much you can endure, but to the fact that you exist and deserve happiness. Self-love also equips you with boundaries, and boundaries are the kryptonite of toxic relationships. Toxic people thrive where boundaries are weak or non-existent. They take advantage of your kindness, exploit your forgiveness, and manipulate your fears. But when you set clear boundaries rooted in self-love, you create limits that protect you. You say, this is what I will accept and this is what I will not. And when those boundaries are violated repeatedly, you have the strength to step away. Self-love makes you unwilling to compromise your mental, emotional, and even physical well-being for the sake of keeping someone else comfortable. Another important way self-love prevents toxic attachments is by reducing emotional dependency. Many toxic relationships persist because one person believes they cannot survive without the other. They mistake dependency for love, but dependency is not love, it is fear. It is the fear of being alone, the fear of facing oneself, the fear of starting over. Self-love dissolves that fear. It teaches you that you are whole on your own, that your happiness is not tied to another person, and that solitude is not emptiness but an opportunity for growth. When you know that you can stand strong on your own, you are no longer vulnerable to clinging to someone just because you don't want to be by yourself. There is also the illusion of comfort in toxic attachments. People sometimes stay in harmful relationships because they are familiar. They think, at least I know what to expect. Starting over would be too difficult. But this kind of comfort is dangerous. It is the comfort of a cage, not the freedom of flight. Self-love reminds you that you deserve more than survival. You deserve to thrive. It pushes you out of the cage and gives you the courage to embrace uncertainty, knowing that even if the path ahead is difficult, it is far better than staying trapped in a cycle of pain. Another dimension to consider is how toxic attachments affect identity. In toxic dynamics, people often lose themselves. They begin to mold their personalities, dreams, and desires around what the other person wants, neglecting their own voice in the process. Over time, they forget who they are. Self-love acts as an anchor. It grounds you in your own identity, reminding you that you do not need to shrink, bend, or erase yourself for anyone. You can be loved exactly as you are without having to compromise your authenticity. This realization is powerful. It prevents you from falling into relationships where you are loved conditionally, where you are only accepted if you play a role. Instead, you hold out for relationships where you are cherished for being fully and unapologetically yourself. Let's also talk about forgiveness. In toxic attachments, forgiveness is often weaponized. The toxic partner hurts you, apologizes superficially, and then repeats the cycle, expecting you to forgive endlessly. Without self-love, you may forgive over and over, hoping they will change, sacrificing your own healing for the illusion of love. But self-love changes how you view forgiveness. It teaches you that forgiveness does not mean accepting repeated mistreatment. Forgiveness can mean releasing bitterness and moving on, but it also means holding people accountable and protecting yourself from continued harm. You realize that true forgiveness does not chain you to toxicity. It frees you to leave it behind. We also cannot ignore the impact of self-love on self-talk. Many people trapped in toxic relationships echo the voices of their abusers internally. They think, maybe it's my fault, maybe I'm too much, maybe I'm not enough. These thoughts are seeds planted by toxic dynamics, and they grow when self-love is absent. But when you cultivate love for yourself, you begin to replace those lies with truths. You tell yourself, I am enough, I am worthy, I do not deserve to be treated this way. And with that inner dialogue, your strength grows. You begin to see clearly, and once you see clearly, it becomes harder and harder to accept mistreatment disguised as love. It is also worth mentioning that self-love doesn't just help you escape toxic attachments. It prevents you from falling into them in the first place. When you value yourself, you are careful about who you allow into your life. You do not ignore red flags because you are desperate for companionship. You take your time to observe how someone treats you, how they respect your boundaries, how they communicate, and how they handle conflict. You listen to your intuition rather than silencing it for the sake of attachment, and when something feels wrong, you have the courage to walk away before it takes root. For those who have already been in toxic attachments, self-love also plays a role in healing. Leaving a toxic relationship often leaves scars, feelings of inadequacy, distrust, or even guilt. Without self-love, those scars can harden into walls, making you afraid to love again. But with self-love, those scars become lessons rather than prisons. You begin to see that the pain you endured does not define you, and it does not diminish your worth. Instead, it becomes proof of your resilience, a reminder that you can overcome hardship and still choose yourself. At its core, the reason self-love prevents toxic attachments is because it shifts the center of gravity back to you. Toxic relationships thrive when you give away your power, when you hand over your happiness, your confidence, and your worth to someone else. Self-love takes that power back. It says, I am responsible for my happiness. I am responsible for my peace. I am responsible for my worth. And when you carry that responsibility, you no longer place it in the hands of someone who misuses it. In the end, the truth is simple yet profound. The more you love yourself, the less likely you are to tolerate what harms you. You cannot prevent people from showing toxic behavior, but you can prevent yourself from being consumed by it. You cannot control how others treat you, but you can control how long you allow yourself to stay in an environment that diminishes you. Self-love is the compass that keeps you on the right path. It is the voice that whispers, "You deserve more." It is the strength that says, "I will not settle." And it is the light that leads you out of the darkness of toxic attachments into the warmth of relationships that are healthy, nurturing, and true. Because love should never suffocate you. Love should not wound you, belittle you, or keep you in fear. Real love, the kind that makes life beautiful, only comes when you first give it to yourself. And once you do, you will never again confuse toxicity for love. You will know the difference, and you will choose better, because you will know that you deserve better. There is something profoundly liberating about living authentically, yet so many people spend their lives hiding behind masks, playing roles, and pretending to be what others want them to be. Why? Because they fear rejection, disapproval, or abandonment. They think that if they show their real selves, their flaws, quirks, weaknesses, or even their true desires, they won't be loved. And so they trade authenticity for acceptance, even though the acceptance they receive is hollow, conditional, and fragile. But when you cultivate self-love, you no longer feel the need to wear masks. You no longer feel the urge to mold yourself into someone else's idea of enough. You begin to live with honesty, with integrity, and with courage. Self-love gives you the strength to be unapologetically yourself, and that authenticity becomes the foundation for healthier, deeper, and more meaningful relationships. Authenticity begins with self-acceptance. When you love yourself, you stop fighting against who you are. You stop waging war on your personality, your body, your past, and your uniqueness. Instead, you embrace them. You recognize that you do not need to fit into a template created by society, culture, or even family expectations. You understand that your worth is not dependent on how well you meet someone else's checklist. When you accept yourself fully, you give yourself permission to show up as you are, without disguise or performance. And that kind of honesty is magnetic. People may not always agree with you, but they will respect your genuineness, because authenticity has a way of cutting through the noise of pretense. The absence of self-love leads to constant performance. People who do not love themselves often spend their days trying to please everyone around them. They laugh when they don't want to, they say yes when they mean no, and they stay silent when their hearts are screaming to speak. They present a carefully curated version of themselves, hoping to gain approval. But here's the irony: even if they receive validation, it feels empty because it's directed at the mask, not at the real person behind it. Deep down, they know that they are being loved for the image they project, not for their authentic self. This creates a cycle of emptiness and loneliness, because nothing feels more isolating than being unseen, even when surrounded by people. Self-love breaks this cycle. When you love yourself, you no longer chase approval at the cost of your truth. You no longer feel the need to hide your real feelings, your real opinions, or your real dream. You begin to express yourself with honesty, not to offend others, but to honor yourself. And while this authenticity may cause some people to walk away, it will also draw the right people closer, the ones who appreciate and value the real you. Self-love teaches you that it is better to be disliked for who you are than loved for who you are not. And when you live that truth, your relationships become more genuine, because they are built on honesty rather than illusion. Living authentically also means embracing vulnerability. It means being willing to say, "This is who I am, with my strengths and weaknesses, with my beauty and my scars." Vulnerability is often seen as a weakness, but in reality, it is the deepest form of strength. To open yourself up to let people see the real you takes courage, and self-love provides that courage. When you love yourself, you are not devastated if someone rejects you, because you know your worth does not diminish with their disapproval. You understand that rejection says more about their perspective than it does about your value. That knowledge gives you the freedom to be vulnerable, to share your true self without fear of losing your dignity. Another way self-love cultivates authenticity is by aligning your actions with your values. Many people live lives that don't match their inner beliefs. They compromise their values to fit in, to gain acceptance, or to avoid conflict. Over time, this creates inner tension, a sense of being disconnected from oneself. But when you love yourself, you respect your values enough to live by them. You stop betraying yourself for approval. You stop living a double life, one for the world and one for your heart. Instead, you integrate the two, becoming whole and consistent. People around you no longer have to guess who you are, because you are the same in public as you are in private. That kind of consistency is rare, and it is one of the most powerful signs of authenticity. Authenticity also means allowing yourself to grow. Sometimes people confuse authenticity with stubbornness, believing that being authentic means never changing. But in truth, authenticity is about being honest with who you are today and allowing yourself the freedom to evolve tomorrow. Self-love helps you embrace that growth. You understand that changing your mind, pursuing new dreams, or letting go of old versions of yourself does not make you fake. It makes you human. You can admit when you were wrong, you can celebrate when you've grown, and you can accept that your journey is ongoing. Authenticity is not about being static. It is about being real in every stage of your becoming. Relationships thrive when authenticity is present. When you love yourself enough to be authentic, you bring honesty into your connections. You communicate openly instead of playing games. You share your true needs instead of suppressing them. You admit your fears instead of pretending to be invincible. This kind of honesty creates intimacy, because intimacy is not built on perfection but on truth. When two people are authentic with each other, they build a bond that is resilient, because it is based on reality, not illusion. They don't waste time pretending, performing, or guessing. They know each other deeply, flaws and all, and still choose to stay. That is the power of authenticity in love. Without authenticity, relationships become fragile. If you enter a relationship pretending to be someone you're not, you will constantly live in fear of being exposed, fear of not being enough, fear of losing approval. That fear creates tension, distance, and dishonesty. Eventually, either the mask slips or the weight of pretending becomes unbearable. Self-love saves you from this fate by teaching you to walk into relationships as yourself, confident that the right person will love you as you are, and the wrong person will leave, and both outcomes are acceptable. Authenticity also applies to the way we pursue our passions and dreams. Many people suppress their ambitions because they are afraid of judgment. They settle for paths that others expect of them, ignoring the quiet voice inside that calls them towards something greater. This suppression leads to regret, because no external approval can compensate for the loss of one's true calling. Self-love, however, gives you the permission to pursue your passions unapologetically. It tells you that your dreams are valid, even if they don't fit the mold others have prepared for you. It tells you that you have the right to create a life that excites your soul, not one that merely pleases the crowd. Living authentically in this way leads to fulfillment, because success is not defined by external applause but by inner alignment. It's also important to recognize that authenticity is contagious. When you live authentically, you give others permission to do the same. Your courage inspires others to drop their masks and embrace their truth. Your honesty encourages them to open up. Your vulnerability makes them feel safe. In this way, self-love not only liberates you, but it creates a ripple effect, helping others step into their own authenticity. This is how communities, friendships, and relationships become more genuine. when individuals have the courage to lead with authenticity. Of course, authenticity comes with risks. Not everyone will appreciate the real you. Some may criticize, judge, or walk away, but this is where self-love becomes your anchor. When you love yourself, you do not crumble under criticism. You do not beg those who leave to stay. You understand that not everyone is meant to walk with you, and that's okay. Authenticity naturally filters your relationships, removing those who only wanted a version of you that wasn't real, and leaving behind those who truly value your essence. It may feel painful in the moment, but in the long run it is a gift, because what remains after the filtering is real, and real is always stronger than fake. Authenticity is also about honesty with yourself. Sometimes the hardest lies to confront are the ones we tell ourselves about our happiness, our relationships, our careers, our desires. We silence our inner truth because it feels inconvenient or scary. But self-love makes you brave enough to face those truths. It makes you admit when you are unhappy, even if you have convinced the world that you are fine. It makes you acknowledge when you are settling, even if you try to justify it. It makes you confront the gap between the life you are living and the life you want to live. And only when you are honest with yourself can you begin to bridge that gap and create a life that feels authentic. At its heart, authenticity is about freedom. It is about freeing yourself from the prison of expectations, from the weight of performance, and from the fear of rejection. Self-love is the key that unlocks that freedom. It says, I will no longer betray myself to please others. I will no longer hide my light to make others comfortable. I will no longer pretend to be someone I'm not in order to be loved. It gives you the courage to stand tall in your truth, even if your voice trembles, even if your steps are shaky. And in that freedom, you find joy, not the shallow joy of pleasing others, but the deep joy of being fully alive as yourself. In the end, self-love and authenticity are inseparable. You cannot live authentically without first loving yourself, because only self-love provides the security and courage needed to reveal your true self to the world. And when you live authentically, your relationships, your dreams, and your life as a whole become richer, because they are built on truth rather than illusion. So if you want deeper connections, greater fulfillment, and lasting happiness, do not look outward, look inward. Ask yourself, am I living as my true self, or am I hiding behind masks? Am I pursuing my truth, or am I chasing approval? Am I expressing my soul, or am I silencing it for acceptance? And then remind yourself, you are enough exactly as you are. The world does not need another copy of someone else. It needs the original you, and the more you love yourself, the easier it becomes to let that original self shine. That is the beauty of self-love. It gives you the courage to stop performing, stop pretending, and start living authentically. And once you step into that authenticity, life feels lighter, brighter, and infinitely more real. Healthy love is not built on neediness, fear, or dependency. It is not about clinging to someone to fill the emptiness inside of you. Real love thrives when two people come together not because they are incomplete, but because they are whole and they choose to share that wholeness. And this is exactly what self-love does. It creates space for love that is healthy, respectful, balanced, and nourishing. Without self-love, relationships often become lopsided, draining, and unhealthy. But when you truly love yourself, you are able to build connections that are strong, authentic, and enduring. When you love yourself, you don't approach relationships with desperation. You aren't searching for someone to rescue you or fix you. You aren't looking for someone to validate your existence or complete the puzzle of your identity. Instead, you approach relationships with a sense of abundance. You already know who you are, you already value your worth, and you already respect yourself. This allows you to enter love from a position of strength rather than weakness. You are not clinging to someone because you need them. You are choosing them because you want to share your life with them. That choice is far more powerful than any desperate attachment. Healthy love requires balance. It requires give and take, not one person pouring endlessly while the other only consumes. When you love yourself, you set the tone for this balance. You understand that your needs matter just as much as your partner's. You are willing to care for them, but you also care for yourself. You know when to give, but you also know when to rest. You support your partner, but you also expect to be supported in return. Self-love helps you maintain this balance because it reminds you that you are not a servant in love. You are an equal. You are not there to be drained but to be cherished, and you are not there to lose yourself but to grow alongside someone. One of the most beautiful things about self-love is that it removes fear from love. Many people fear abandonment or rejection so much that they compromise their dignity just to keep someone close. They walk on eggshells, avoid difficult conversations, or tolerate mistreatment because they are terrified of being alone. But when you love yourself, you are not paralyzed by this fear. You know that if someone leaves, it does not diminish your worth. You know that if a relationship ends, you will still be whole. This allows you to love freely and fearlessly. You can open your heart without being crushed by insecurity, because your identity is not tied to someone else's presence. And paradoxically, when you remove fear from love, love actually deepens. It becomes more genuine because it is no longer driven by desperation, but by choice. Self-love also creates emotional clarity. When you value yourself, you become more discerning about who you allow into your life. You don't mistake control for passion, jealousy for devotion, or manipulation for care. You can see clearly what love is and what it is not. You are less likely to fall into relationships that are toxic or one-sided because love acts as a filter. It protects you from illusions and helps you recognize red flags early. This clarity ensures that the love you choose to accept is love that honors you, not diminishes you. Another way self-love creates space for healthy love is by teaching you how to communicate honestly. People who lack self-love often hide their feelings, fearing they will be seen as too much or too needy. They suppress their emotions and their needs until they explode in unhealthy ways. But when you love yourself, you are not afraid to voice your truth. You know that your needs are valid and you have the confidence to express them respectfully. You also know how to listen because self-love teaches you patience and empathy. This kind of open communication is the lifeline of healthy love. It builds trust, strengthens intimacy, and prevents misunderstandings from festering into resentment. Healthy love also requires boundaries, and self-love is the foundation of boundaries. Without self-love, boundaries feel impossible. You let people overstep, invade your space, and take without giving because you are afraid of being disliked. But when you love yourself, you realize that boundaries are not walls. They are doors. They do not push people away. They teach people how to treat you. Boundaries in love are essential because they protect individuality. They remind both partners that love does not mean ownership. Self-love ensures that you can say no without guilt, that you can ask for space without fear, and that you can protect your peace without apology. One of the most profound truths about self-love is that it transforms the way you give love. When you don't love yourself, the love you give others often comes with hidden expectations. You give because you want validation in return, because you are afraid they will leave, or because you think it will prove your worth. But when you love yourself, you give freely. You give not to earn love, but to express it. You give not from emptiness, but from fullness. This makes your love purer, more generous, and more lasting. It creates a safe space where your partner does not feel pressured to constantly fill a void, but instead feels invited to share joy, support, and growth. Self-love also changes the way you handle conflict. In unhealthy love, conflicts often spiral into blame, guilt, or emotional manipulation. But when you love yourself, you approach conflict with maturity. You do not see disagreements as threats to your worth. You do not lose yourself in shame or defensiveness. Instead, you can listen, reflect, and communicate calmly. You can acknowledge your mistakes without self-destruction, and you can hold your partner accountable without cruelty. This emotional maturity strengthens the bond because both people feel safe enough to face challenges together without fear of destruction. Another dimension of healthy love is the freedom it creates. Love should not feel like a cage, it should feel like wings. When you love yourself, you do not try to control your partner or make them responsible for your happiness. You give them space to be themselves, and you expect the same in return. You understand that love is not about losing individuality, but about celebrating it. Two whole people come together, not to merge into one identity, but to grow side by side, supporting each other's journey. This freedom deepens love because it allows both partners to thrive independently while remaining connected. Self-love also makes you more compassionate. When you respect yourself, you naturally extend that respect to others. You can empathize with your partner without losing yourself in their emotions. You can be patient with their flaws because you are patient with your own. You can forgive without forgetting your worth. This balance between compassion and self-respect is what creates the healthiest form of love, a love that is kind yet strong, gentle yet firm, giving yet balanced. Perhaps one of the greatest gifts of self-love is that it teaches you to appreciate love without becoming dependent on it. You can cherish your partner deeply while still knowing that you are whole on your own. You do not idolize them or make them the center of your existence. Instead, you see them as a beautiful addition to your already full life. This perspective makes love more joyful because you are not constantly living in fear of losing it. You can appreciate every moment, every memory, and every shared experience because you know that your happiness is not entirely tied to it. That freedom makes love lighter, brighter, and more enduring. We must also acknowledge that self-love helps you heal within relationships. Even in the healthiest love, challenges and misunderstandings will arise. But when you love yourself, you approach healing with openness. You do not hold grudges forever, nor do you lose yourself in bitterness. You give yourself and your partner the chance to repair and rebuild because you believe that love is worth nurturing when it is rooted in respect. Self-love ensures that forgiveness is not weakness, but strength. The strength to move forward without erasing your own needs or boundaries. Finally, self-love creates space for healthy love because it redefines what love means to you. It teaches you that love is not meant to hurt, belittle, or control. It is meant to uplift, respect, and inspire. It is not meant to trap you in fear, but to set you free in trust. When you truly love yourself, you refuse to settle for anything less. You no longer chase after temporary attention or shallow affection. You hold out for the kind of love that mirrors the love you already have for yourself. Deep, respectful, nurturing, and true. At the heart of it, self-love is the soil in which healthy love grows. Without it, relationships become fragile, imbalanced, and toxic. With it, relationships flourish. They become partnerships where both people are seen, heard, and valued. They become safe spaces where both individuals can grow and evolve. They become sources of strength, joy, and peace. And this is the kind of love that lasts, not because it is perfect, but because it is rooted in wholeness. So if you want to create a love that is healthy, start by cultivating love within yourself. Treat yourself with respect, honor your needs, embrace your imperfections, and nurture your heart. When you do, you will no longer settle for anything less than what you deserve. You will attract love that matches your own energy, love that reflects your own respect, and love that enhances your life rather than diminishes it. And remember, the greatest act of love you can ever perform for another is to love yourself first. Because only when you are whole within can you create a love that is whole without. That is how self-love creates space for the kind of love we all long for, the love that is not just passionate, but peaceful, not just exciting, but enduring, not just romantic, but deeply, profoundly healthy.